Hello and welcome to another video. Today we will be making this beautiful HTML CSS and JavaScript relationship. Basically you can see the bones. The bones are the HTML of the body. The person with the colors or when whatever he is wearing is the CSS, and the veins are the JavaScript. This is basically the perfect example of a relationship between HTML, CSS and JavaScript. I will be creating this. I have basically three different images already. I will create this. Let's start with index.html, and I am basically creating something which clearly describes the HTML and how HTML is the structure. In this case, HTML are the bones of the body, CSS is whatever he is wearing or the skin, and JavaScript is the veins of the person. Now I'm just attaching and linking my style.css and JavaScript with my HTML. Let's create a class of div of class person. Now a person has another class of inside. Okay. Now I'm creating another div of class of selector, basically to select the HTML or you can say JavaScript, so that I can change it from HTML from bones to skin, and likewise I'm creating a radio button, basically input type radio, which has the options value of HTML, and firstly in the beginning HTML will be checked. After that I'm creating a label for HTML and creating another input of type radio again. The second one will be for the value of JavaScript or JS and ID of JS as well. In the beginning HTML will be selected or checked, and creating another label of JavaScript. Okay, now you can see I have two HTML and CSS, JavaScript. Now let's style it. I will simply start with the body and I will give it a margin of 0. I will give it a height of 100 VH, give it a display of flex, align item center, justify content center, overflow of hidden. Now you can see that everything is in the middle, and I will take the person, basically you can see the div of class person, and I will use that person and give it a width of 320 pixels, and I give it a height of 537 pixels. You can change the values, it basically depends on you, whatever you want. And I will give it a background image of css.png for this image. I will give it a position of relative. I will give it a cursor of move, so that I can move the cursor and I can show you the bones and the veins and what I showed you in the beginning. Now I take a class of inside, which is inside the person, and I give it a width of 100%. I will give it a height of 100 pixels. Background image should be css.png again. Sorry, for the person inside it should be html.png for the bone structure basically. Now let's give it a position, background position of center, and give it a box sizing of border box. Now give it a border of 5 pixels solid and give it a color of gray. Give it a border radius of 0.3 em. Give it a position of absolute. Give it a top of 25%, a background attachment of fixed, and a pointer events of none. Now you can see I'll simply move this up and down. I will show you. Now let's create for the selector, take a class of selector, and using the selector I will give it a position of absolute, give it a width of 9 em, top of calculate 50% minus 8 em divided by 2. You must give spaces, otherwise it don't work. You can see now it is in the middle. I will give it a left of 3 em and a display of grid. Now let's, for the grid template columns, repeat to 1fr, and I will do same for the rows in the next one. Okay, let's take the selector of input, where you can see that it has a input label above in the label, it has an input. So I will take the width from 1.2 em and a height of 1.2 em as well. So now let's take for the label, selector label, and give it a font size of 1.5 em. Give it a font family of, I can maybe any font family, it's up to you basically. give it a cursor or pointer, you can see for the HTML and JavaScript. Now you can see that the first one is already checked, that the selector input is, if the selector input is checked plus the label, give it a color of dodge blue. For example, if you have chosen any of one, if I have chosen HTML or CSS JavaScript, the color changes to dodge blue. Now let's write a script. I will use the function of init. I will call the function later on. I will get a var of person, variable of person, document dot query selector, and call it dot person class. I'm basically creating all the variables inside of document dot query selector again, and give it a dot person inside dot inside. Okay. Now let's create the third variable, which is options. Options document dot get element by name, and give it an options, because you can see that inside the input I have already given name of options. Okay. Now let's take a const window height of 100 and a const offset of window height divided by 2. Now let's take a const of person height equal to number dot parse int, so that if someone has put, or I have an float value, I can change it to integer using parse int. Window dot computed style person dot height. Now let's give it a give it an event of mouse move, so that when I move it on the screen, and call an event basically an arrow function, if e dot offset of y is less than offset, or e dot event of y is greater than person height minus offset. Now just simply return it if this happens. Now let's give it an inside style top is the, for example, basically the style, and give it an e dot offset of minus y of offset plus pixels. Now options dot for each loop, for each is basically a loop, and I'm creating an arrow function here with an option or as a parameter, and using that option parameter, and adding a event listener of click inside dot style dot background image, so the background image should be changed. URL of basically options dot value dot png, so that if we choose HTML, it should have HTML. If we choose JavaScript, it should have JavaScript. Now you can see that it's not moving, and the reason is, I will show you. I think option, yeah, it is option, and I have not called the function, so I am calling a function window.onload, and you can see when I click it, now it's working. I basically call the function. I hope you like the video, and this is the best relationship between HTML, CSS and JavaScript on YouTube, I guess. If you like this thing, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.